I am Madison Timmons.
I'm Chris Susie.
And we're paranormal specialists who live in the most haunted city on earth, Savannah, Georgia. Every day is Halloween in our line of work, so join us as we spin true tales of haunts, murders, and disturbing Savannah history. I'm Madison.
I'm Chris.
And welcome to the most haunted city on earth. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of The Most Haunted City on Earth. My name is Madison Timmons.
My name is Chris Susie.
And I'm JT Timmons.
No fun name today?
Nope.
Oh, okay.
It can't happen every time.
Well, some
It's
people
got to
look
take them by surprise.
Understood. Okay. Well, welcome, y'all. We have a long-awaited Ghostmail.
Woo!
Yeah, we've been a little piled up on Ghostmail, so we figured it was an appropriate time to do one of these. And also, if you hear intermittent pitter-patter in the background, that is JT tempering a knife while we are filming this.
Two knives.
So
They won't hear it, though. It's
intermittent pitter-patter.
Intermittent pitter-patter.
But
Or if
yeah,
you just see us looking off in the distance, it's because the building is caught on fire.
that is true, too.
No.
But yes, so we're going to do a ghost mail today, but we do have a few announcements before we get into it. First off, when we are filming this as of August 19th, which is today's date, correct? Yes. So as of today, we have a new merch piece that just dropped.
Heck yeah.
It was designed by one of our parajunkies, Elle. And it is basically a plague doctor doing a death drop while holding a rat with the scientific name for the bubonic plague.
And I have it right here.
Yes. JT inserted the photo. It's personally, I think, one of my favorite pieces of merch.
It's really cool.
I will be getting it.
The rat's very cute.
Yes. I will be wearing that, and I'm probably going to turn it into a little crop top, so it'll be a sassy plague doctor crop top.
Yes, indeed.
But yeah, it's really exciting. And Elle wrote out like a little artist statement attached to it, kind of explaining, that the bubonic plague is still a thing, which it is. It is still around.
Absolutely.
So it's really interesting. So when you go to see it, we have it linked below. Make sure to read the caption as well, so that you get a little bit of the background story that Elle included. It is.
Snow commented and said, "I'm already throwing it in my cart."
I need it.
It's
we'll
really
be
cool.
twinsies.
Oh yeah.
But so what you're hearing from JT is we are also live streaming right now. So if you hear us making little commentary throughout it, that is with the Parajunkies who are watching this live while we are filming it. Which leads us into, it's always a good time to become a Parajunkie.
Yes, join us live.
Yeah, you can watch us do this live. We just did a little bit of a fix before that, which is essentially about 30, 40 minutes before we start filming the actual episode. We sit back and chat with the Parajunkies. We talk about things. They got to hear a little bit about my thoughts on the new And That's Why We Drink book, which they so kindly sent to us because on August 29th, they are going to be joining us on the show virtually. And we're going to be talking about their new book. It is called A Haunted Road Atlas Next Stop, because it's the second edition of their Haunted Road Atlas series. Really interesting. They actually do cover Savannah in this one, so that was very exciting to see. Really fantastic book, just as at minimum a reference, if you will. When
absolutely.
You're visiting different towns and stuff, and you just want to see, what true crime happened there, what paranormal happened there. They also include restaurants and hotels and other things of that nature. So it was a really cool book. I blew through it pretty quickly. So, and there's also games at the back of it, like road games.
Road trip games.
Which is fun. So we're going to be having them on the show, and we're very excited for that. And we're going to talk about the book, but we're also going to talk about some of their paranormal experiences, and we're going to be just generally interviewing them and whatnot. So it's going to be a really great time. Do make sure, though, to become a Parajunkie if you're on the fence about it before that episode, because we will be going live for that as well. So,
oh yeah, absolutely. This is the best time to become a Parajunkie, so you can experience things like this live and have full interactive prowess
Yeah.
while we're doing these kinds of events.
Exactly. So, yeah, it's going to be really awesome. But all right, y'all, let's go ahead and dive on into the ghost mail. So, our first one is going to be from Lisa. So it says, "Hello, my name is Lisa Parker, and I've been listening to your podcast since the beginning after I found you on TikTok, the Bones in the Tree episode, which I think is literally our first TikTok that went viral. So thank you, Lisa, for sticking around this long. I had to tell you how much I love it. I listened to several spooky, gothic, history, and true crime podcasts, but you guys are my absolute favorite, which is very sweet. In fact, back in March, I went back and re-binged all your episodes. Nothing better than having...
That's quite a feat.
That is quite a feat. Nothing better than having fun ghost stories to keep me company while I'm cleaning and during my commute to and from work. But I ran out of content and needed more of my ghostly fix, so I decided to finally take the plunge and join the Parajunkie fam. So glad I did. Yes, thank you, Lisa. I don't know if you're on the live stream right now, but...
Thanks, Lisa.
So we appreciate you doing that. But I've been wanting to send you all my ghost mail about some of my experience for ages, but I'm a pretty busy gal and have had a hard time pinning down a moment to sit down and write. Now that I'm a parajunkie, I guess it's time for me to stop lurking around in the background and do it.
Woo-woo.
I grew up in beautiful Washington State and have lived here almost all my life, with the exception of a few years of traveling around the country with my husband while he was in the military. I currently live in a small seaside farming town about an hour north of Seattle.
Oh, that sounds
nice. Really cool.
Oh my gosh.
I don't know if I could call myself particularly sensitive in any way, but I have had some interesting experiences throughout my life that I believe are paranormal, both here in the Pacific Northwest as well as in Norfolk, Virginia, where my husband was stationed when we were first married. Whether these experiences are due to the history and specific conditions of the places I've lived, or something to do with me, or a crazy concoction of both, I have no idea. But I can remember several situations that I can't explain outside the realm of paranormal encounters. For the sake of trying to keep this ghost mail from turning into a novel, right now I'll just focus on one of the things I experienced as a child. When I was around 3 or 4, we moved into a house that my dad had designed and built himself. Although the house was brand spanking new at the time, it was built on property that was directly adjacent to an old rectory and church. In fact, the derelict rectory shared the property line with our backyard, and the tiny rundown church, which was still in use as a mission church at that time for the migrant farm workers in our area, was just to the left of our property's corner. From the time we moved into that house, I remember having experiences which always happened at night. I often saw the dark silhouette of a woman in my room, just standing there between my bed and my doorway.
That is not the first time I've heard that.
Yeah, I hate a watcher like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because oftentimes
Right?
people will even say like they thought it was their mother,
Yep.
or they thought
Yep.
that they have a very distinct knowledge, A,
Yep.
that it's a woman, and B, that she's entirely obscured by shadow.
That's so creepy, though. Just standing there between my bed and my doorway, as though she was watching me. My favorite type. I was never able to see her face because it was completely hidden in deep shadow. However, I do remember that I could tell from her silhouette that she seemed to be wearing a below-the-knee length skirt and what looked like a handkerchief or bandana tied over her hair. Think along the lines of Rosie the Riveter.
Yeah, I was about to say.
Weird, I know, but I remember that detail specifically, which, I mean, would make sense because Rosie the Riveter was an iconic figure. That person could have been alive during that time period, and it would have
that
been
particular
fashionable.
fashion was always kind of like from the late 1800s to the mid 1900s. That was a tried and true way to get your hair out of your face.
Yeah.
Yep.
And especially if you're in farm country, you know.
It's very farmer.
Yeah, the spirits there, if they were people who lived in that area, would have been, you know, wearing the farmer fashion of the date, if you will. And also women did work in skirts at certain time periods. So
yeah, women in trousers was not a common theme until mid 20th century.
So not weird. Totally understand that. But I remember that detail specifically to because it was something very recognizable to me, as my mom would sometimes tie a hanky over her hair in a similar way while she would hang around at home or do her housework. I never felt particularly afraid of this visitor, although I do remember feeling confused and pretty unsettled the first couple times I saw her. In fact, there almost seemed to be something familiar about her, which is probably why I didn't completely freak out. Although I have no idea who she could be, as my mother and both my grandmothers were still alive at that time, perhaps an ancestor? Great-grandmother? Who knows? She wasn't there every night, but I saw her often enough that after a while she became an almost normal part of my bedtime. So much so that when I'd see her, I'd just roll over and go to sleep, as though having a strange faceless lady standing in my room staring at me was no big deal. Apparently, she thought watching 4-year-old me fall asleep was a pretty exciting show. Either that or she had nothing better to do. She never interacted with me in any way, just stood there and watched, and she always looked exactly the same, right down to her little hair hanky. As I got a little older, she began to show up less and less frequently. Until I stopped seeing her altogether somewhere around the age of 6, although her presence was replaced by many other encounters and experiences. So for now, that's my story. Perhaps not the most exciting in the grand scheme of things, but this one is the earliest thing I can remember. Now, I have a couple questions for you. First, do you think this could somehow be connected to the old rectory and church that bordered our property? I don't know the history of that church or whether or not the plot of land that our house was built on had been part of it. All I know is that as long as we lived in that house, I was fascinated with the church, drawn to the abandoned rectory in particular, and spent a lot of time exploring the area until we moved away when I was 12. Second, could my childhood nighttime visitor be considered a hat man? Or maybe more accurately, a handkerchief lady is what she said. I know there are some differences from a traditional hat man story, but the first time I heard you talking about the hat man on the podcast, all kinds of bells of recognition went off in my head, and it immediately brought to mind my bedtime visitor from so long ago. Anyway, I'm anxious to hear your take on this. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'm sorry it ended up being so long, although it would be hard to adequately tell a story like this without being a little bit wordy. Again, it may not be as exciting or creepy as a story as some, but it made a deep impact on me, helping to lay the foundation for a deep, lifelong interest in all things ghosty and creepy. I have several other stories that I can share with you guys if you're interested. Just let me know. Thank you for this amazing podcast and for creating a fun community and safe space where all us weirdos can come together to share our love of spooky stuff.
Aww.
And just a quick side note, I have a couple of requests. I'd love to hear an episode or two on haunted locations in Seattle and the Pacific Northwest, which I'm happy to do. I love the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah, we should. Let's do it soon.
We have some pretty great haunts to check out over here, both in Western and Eastern Washington.
Doesn't Seattle have like an entire undercity?
Yeah, I think it does. We shall do some research into
like Toronto.
Yeah.
Even more expansive.
Really?
Yeah.
And an episode on cryptids in this area would also be amazing. And one other non-Pacific Northwest related haunted location I'd love to hear you guys do a deep dive on is Penhurst Asylum.
We just were talking about
Yeah.
that as a possible location that we would visit.
So anyway, thanks again. Keep up the amazing work and stay spooky, y'all.
All right.
Very nice.
Yeah.
I agree. So Trisha just said, what a great Ghostmail story. I agree.
Yeah, absolutely. And never apologize. You don't have to. We love long stories.
Yes.
There's no such thing as it's not blank enough. It's not creepy enough. It's not strange enough. There's no such thing. These are stories about your personal experiences. So that in itself makes it endlessly fascinating. That is such an interesting thing. And to answer your two questions, the first one, could it be involved with the rectory? Of course it could be. It could have something to do with it. But something that people oftentimes overlook is we get really hung up on the notion of location is key to understanding the spirits of a place. And that's simply just not the case. There are plenty of reasons why spirits would congregate at a location. It does not have to be the place that they worked, lived, or died. There could be any number of things. A familial connection could be an ancestor, could be someone who is connective through your family through some way, and finds a purpose in watching over you sleep. And the fact that you first started noticing when you're like 4 or 5 years old, that age range is very good for perception. And the fact that you were seeing them less and less may not have been that they were coming less and less. It was that your perception was closing off.
Yeah.
The entity may have still been there, but you just weren't as flexible in your mind to see it. That's one thing. The other thing is it's more likely that the Hat Man is in a category of watching spirits rather than this spirit is a Hat Man spirit.
Yeah.
Because we've talked about watchers plenty of times. There are lots of ghosts that seem to just stay at thresholds or stay at the end of the bed or right outside the window. And the Hat Man feels like he generally falls in that category, although we've gotten a few stories where the Hat Man was a little more interactive, which is new to us and kind of wonderful when people are telling us Hat Man stories and like he had red eyes and he said something. You're like, whoa, okay.
It's like, that's an evolved Hat Man.
Right. That's stepping out of the normal Hat Man mythos as we know it, but it is a developing mythos because it hasn't been examined a lot. The fact that a lot of people have seen the Hat Man or seen this shadowy figure in a hat, it creates what makes a Hat Man is literally a man in a hat, and that's all we've got. That's right. As far as we can go because we're still compiling all these stories and still hearing all this evidence. However, shadow people that watch you, that goes from guardian angels, guardian demons, guardian family members. That goes through just people who died and want to be alive so desperately that they follow living people around and watch their lives predatorily because it's how they vicariously exist. So, it's far more likely to say that the Hat Man and your spectral visitor are of the same category, which we call watching spirits or watchers.
Yeah. If we do want to go on the basis of, just simply where your house was located, there is also the possibility that, a pastor's house would have been where your house would have stood and it's no longer standing there. So the spirit could have been the pastor's wife or, one of the women who work in the church or things like that. To me, at least, just because when I was growing up, I had spirits in my house that would watch me. And it always felt like because it was particularly when I was very small, it always felt like they were kind of just keeping an eye on me because I'm a small child. And, if you think about some of the people that would have been actively in that area often would be, people who maybe worked in the nursery of the church and
caretakers.
Caretakers. And because you were such a small child, there's a possibility that she could have just been like, oh, got to keep an eye on the baby, to make sure it's the child's doing okay. And as you got older and a little less prone to incidents or whatever, it's possible she could have been backing off a little bit, just as a theory.
Sure.
You never really can know because
there's such a wide level. Because there's even there are cultures who believe that when you build a new house, you shouldn't live in it for a year. You should leave it empty for a year before you move in, because spirits are drawn to new empty spaces and spirits are looking for new homes and that new home energy and the energy of moving in and the family that starts there. And all of that energy is such positive and good energy that it draws spirits in. So you want to get those spirits to abandon the building before you move in.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Oftentimes with sudden hauntings, it's because you went to an antique store and brought something in. That's
absolutely. You could have bought an item. Absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what I thought of.
But if you didn't feel any kind of malevolence from it or whatever, it's always going to be unnerving when something stares at you. So I think that's a fair estimate.
Yeah.
That would be. But the fact that you eventually were like, oh, the lady's here again, I'm going to roll back over and go back to sleep, seems like a good sign that it was probably nothing.
Probably just concerned spectral citizen.
Yeah, and not a concerned spectral citizen. But it's I don't think that's a boring story at all.
Not even. No, it's kind of wonderful. And that's just it. people think that a story has to have this high impact in action, but the truth of the matter is, if you have such a clear comprehension of the spirit, it raises all these questions about our own awareness of what's around us. Was there a time when we were more apt to seeing, feeling, and sensing these things? And as we grew, we kind of closed the door on it. Is there a time in our lives where we are more spiritual magnets than other times in our lives? It raises a lot of questions worth examining.
So, yeah, thank you so much, Lisa, for sending in your story. And yeah, please send in all the other stories that
absolutely.
you have.
Send them all.
But this next one comes from Ghost Girl.
Ghost Girl.
And it was titled The Mimic.
Ooh,
oh, no.
I love a mimic. I love a mimic.
Oh, we know. But hello, I finally...
I'm just done.
Chris, you said, never mind.
Oh, yeah.
I got it.
Yeah, okay.
Understood. Okay. So, hello. I finally built the courage to tell my story. Throughout my teen years and younger adult years, I had used Ouija boards.
Not a judgment.
Yeah. Explored abandoned locations, did my research on things I was seriously interested in. I genuinely have always wanted to be a paranormal investigator my entire life, but my lack of social media and being a very shy person, I've never been able to find people that are also interested enough to actually go and do these things with me, aside from my husband. I have quite a few experiences, but these are probably the ones that really haunts me to this day. So I do want to apologize in advance if it's too long. Please feel free to email me any questions or ask away, since I listen every day. I started having sleep paralysis quite often around the age of 12. And I just figured it was from a ton of stress and fear because I was in an extremely abusive household after my parents split when I was 9. The abuse started when I was 10 through 17. Nobody, not even law enforcement or my church, listened to me because my mom's boyfriend was a very lovable man of God and well-respected man of the community. I also think the cops just didn't want to deal with a drunk that they had gotten calls about constantly. But because of the church's response to my claims, it has obviously changed my religious views, but that's not the point of my story. I felt so alone and like nobody understood or believed anything that was happening. I constantly see shadow figures, hear noises nobody else heard, and just genuinely thought I was losing it. I would have these episodes of sleep paralysis, and I always saw and heard the same thing. 2 hooded figures who had no features but eyes, no hair, nothing. But for some reason, I could tell they were female. I'd have a dream with them. I'd be out for a run and I would see them. Being startled in my dream, I'd start to run home. Every person I saw in my dream had also lost all features and looked like the figures. I'd get home in my dream, lay down, and then wake up in the real world with sleep paralysis. They were always next to my bed, on the floor or at the foot end, and they just watch me. And I could hear whispering. That is so creepy. I could never make out what they were saying, but it was like I had headphones on. It was that loud. And I'd hear snakes all around me among the whispers, which I'm beyond terrified of.
Oh, boy.
Well, fast forward to me being 17, still getting sleep paralysis off and on. At this point, my mom finally left the abusive guy after 8 years, but I'm still struggling to this day with PTSD. One day, my mom and brother are away. They left the state for the weekend, and I'm so thrilled to be alone for a few days. The layout of the house was you'd walk through the front door, and to the right was a dining room. Directly left was a staircase that would either go up to the 3rd floor or down to the basement. My room was in the basement. There was a living room type area, my room and a bathroom directly across. In the living room area, we had a very large sectional L-shaped couch. It was probably around 3 to 4 a.m. and I came out of my room and went upstairs to get a drink. I've had insomnia since the abuse, so I was always up at random hours reading because I was afraid to fall asleep for so long, so this was a very normal thing for me. As I was coming down the steps, I see my mom plain as day, sitting in the dark in the corner of the sectional, and all she said was, "Hello," in a very calm voice. I said, "Hey, what's up?" I looked at her briefly, but I remember to this day what she looked like from head to toe, what she was wearing, everything. I go into my room and shut the door, and that's when it hits me. My mom, for one, would never say hello. She would have just spoken to me, and she wouldn't be sitting in the dark. So I get my phone out and I call her. She answers, but sounds very out of it. "What's wrong? Why are you calling me so late?" And I said, "I thought you were out of town. Stop playing with me at this hour. I just saw you. I don't get why you would do that. You scared the daylights out of me." She said, "No, you didn't. I'm in Jersey with your brother. You sound so scared. What did you see? Hello?" And I just remember hanging up and locking my door. I sent her a text and said that I will explain it more in person. I stayed awake all weekend. I never left my room. I just kept watching my door. But throughout that time, I heard my mom clearly calling my name. "Won't you come out? I have to show you something. Hello? Come here." I have chills. That is so creepy.
Yeah, it's super creepy, yo.
Is all it would say while also constantly saying my name or knocking on my door.
I think that's button worthy.
Yeah.
Oh, hell no.
Literally. Ooh, that's so creepy. And I remember, okay. I didn't say a word to it because I didn't want to engage with whatever it was. I remember when my mom really came home, she tried to open my door and she started knocking and messing with my doorknob. And at that point, I just screamed to get away. My mom repeatedly said how it was her and that she was home. She called my cell phone so I could hear that she was really there. I swung my door open so fast and explained what had happened. My mom and brother to this day are the only ones to fully believe me because they said that the fear in my voice and on my face let them know that this was serious.
Wow.
I saw the Hat Man frequently. He was always seen in the doorway in front of my door, blocking my path, or in my closet. Since then, I can't sleep with any door open, closet or bedroom. I'm just terrified of seeing him. There's a lot more that from just this house, but before sending this, I realized it was very long, and if you want me to send more, I'll send it.
Yeah.
My husband says it's not that he doesn't believe me, it's just he's never experienced anything, as well as he said that story is so terrifying that he doesn't want it to be real.
Yeah.
Understood.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Again, sorry it's so long. I finally feel comfortable to say what's happened to me and not be afraid to do so. Among all the things I've experienced, this will always be the scariest one.
Yeah.
The image of my mom, in quotes, is burned into my brain. As crazy as it sounds, I have another story about when I was connected to a spirit. At least that's how I take it. But I've seemed to have, I guess you'd say, lost that connection. Is there a way to reconnect? As crazy as it might sound, I'd enjoy being connected. I've always heard that everyone has the ability to connect in some way in the spirit realm. Any tips on doing so, I'd love to know. I do know that by opening yourself up to the good, you're always also opening yourself up for the bad. I really don't know how to say any of this without sounding insane, but I finally feel comfortable somewhere. Thank you for listening, not passing judgment, and giving people such as myself a safe space to tell our stories and get some type of answer and reassurance in knowing that we are in fact not crazy. I feel more at home listening to you and all the other submissions than I have anywhere else. Any questions, please feel free to email me, as I don't have social media, or ask away here because I'll be listening. Much love to you all. Stay spooky. Ghost E-Girl, Lexi with 2 eyes from YouTube. And
Nice.
yeah. So, yeah, that's...
Evil exploits the vulnerable. And so
Yeah,
I wonder if that's why at that point...
When you first... Yeah. Yes. The first thing is, so sorry that you had to go through... abuse and that you're dealing with the repercussions of abuse. But you were very astute in suggesting that it was the stresses of that thing, because there is a simple notion that when we seek for coping mechanisms, when we're hurt, when we're harmed, when we're vulnerable, it's like we're fiddling with a combination lock. Our mind is trying to come up with avenues of escape and of defense. and the things that we can unlock in those moments can attract some powerful forces to come in and interact with us. And the prolonged abuse definitely is like slowly pushing open a door to spiritual vulnerability. Absolutely. And it's so fascinating. We actually got a question from one of our parajunkies about how you deal with mimics, because the most common one was to ignore it. If you heard your name, no, you didn't. If you, to kind of, and is there another way to deal with a mimic? Unfortunately, in these cases, usually when they're in your own home, it's very difficult to get around a mimic, or, and the ideal thing is to get away from the area that it has associated itself with, because the mimic has a lot of strength in the place that it draws its ability to mimic. So it's got and garnered its ability to mimic by being in close proximity to the things that it's mimicking. And that's why like wooded area mimics are very dangerous, because they're not like in your house.
Right.
If there is a mimic in your house, getting out of your house is a good way to do this. Is gets away from the thing that it's drawing to allow itself to be whatever it's pretending to be. But if it's out in the woods and you hear a voice and you're like, that's my mom's voice, and you're out in the middle of the woods, that spirit is not using the environment. It's using something connective with you, which is, again, likely what happened is mining through your mind, especially in sleep paralysis, it was able to form and create a form that it could fool you with. Mm-hmm. And that's where really the question is like, what is it trying to accomplish? What does the mimic want from us? What would happen if you open the door? And that's where the big puzzle is. It's like, well, the most likely thing is we will never know, because you will disappear. That's the end of a lot of mimic stories, is also the beginning of a lot of mysteries. It's like, how do people just vanish? How do they just go with no trace? Where do they go? Why do they go? Could it be an encounter with a mimic spirit? There was a period of time when everybody was really fascinated by the black-eyed kids.
Yes.
So black-eyed kids who'd come to the house and ask to get in. And the question was always, well, what happens if you let them in? It's like, well, we'll never know those stories, because anybody who let them in probably was never heard from again. So these are the kinds of things that it's more about being highly cautious about interactions with these kinds of spirits, because we don't know. No one's had the answer to what happens when you succumb, when they catch up to you, when they get you. But hundreds of years of folklore tell us, don't do it.
Right.
Don't fall for it.
Don't listen to it.
Don't listen to it. I find it interesting. We do not curate these ghost mails. We kind of get to them as they have come to us. And they always seem connected.
Right.
This is
They
very
really
connected
do.
to Lisa's. This is,
Yes.
there was a Hat Man reference. There was, the shadow figures, the female shadow figures. Even that, is interesting. And I'm really intrigued by the duo.
Yes.
There was something strangely familiar to me about these shaved head, hood wearing female entities, and it's just scratching in the back of my head. That was a very intense and creepy. I just actually got I watched a TikTok where a woman was saying that her mother was a mimic and was at the door. I might have sent it to you too.
Oh yeah,
it was a woman on the other side of the door saying, "Open the door," and it was so odd, but it gave me super chills, because I was like,
it's creepy.
"This is easy enough to fake." But why is it giving me such chills? Why is it bothering me so deeply? And it's kind of the notion of, could you imagine being in your house and hearing your mom behaving in a way that just isn't your mom, and trying to get into your room and acting in this very peculiar way?
Yeah.
It's like that's part of that deep despair and dread of the mimic. It's somebody you love and know disguised. It's someone it's very odd.
Yeah, that unnerved me, because I don't know if y'all Well, I know some of y'all who are the ultra para junkies who joined us for the detox. I believe it was Trisha who asked the question of what our biggest fears are. Probably, and my biggest fear is I don't like when things or people specifically who have bad intentions have full access to me.
Yes,
absolutely. Like the strangers ruined that for me because I hate the idea that these horrible murderers are have full access to these people. It's just there's no way to get away from them. So that gave that same, as you were saying, itch, if you will, where it's like how horrifying to be trapped into a house with something that is clearly trying to lure you, but also who knows, has malevolent intentions or whatever.
Right. It is that unknown element. It is how far can this go wrong? What terrible thing could befall us? And again, when you're dealing with a mimic, a lot of fail safes have already been lost. Like if you're using protection, if you're using anything to guard you spiritually, the way the mimic gets to you is through a manipulation of you. So that connection is there, and that notion that I can sage it away, or I can use crystals or cleanse. There's a bigger issue at play. There is a door that is open, and something came through that door, the door that was open. So because mimics are a different entity than most. And again, we just don't understand them enough. But we have to understand at the very least, in order for a mimic to work, it has to know the thing that it's mimicking. It has to It has to have access to it. And the clearest access it seems to have is usually the person, like the victim is somehow feeding the mimic, and however that came to be or however that came to pass, we don't know.
Right.
So Pam asked a question that I can answer. Do you read Ghostmails in order? What month/year are you on?
I just pulled that up. It's July.
Yeah, July. Okay, yeah. We're like about a month behind, but we don't skip Ghostmail. So if you send in a Ghostmail, we gonna read it, and we don't read Ghostmails beforehand because we want like that reaction.
Exactly.
We don't want to fake a reaction because we already know what's coming. So, so send in your ghost mail to ghostmail@hauntedcitypodcast.com, and it will get read. We have a lot of other stuff going on in between, but we have a couple ghost mails a month.
So, first off, thank you, Ghost Girl, for sending in your story. Yeah. And I'm glad that you feel comfortable enough to be able to share your story here. And so, if you want to send any more stories that you've had as well, the Ghost Mail chat is open, if you will. So,
yes.
So this next one is actually a follow-up from a Ghost Mail we got a while ago that we read. It was from Jesse, which was also about a mimic of, I believe, Jesse's dad of some sort, because Jesse had mentioned that they fell asleep while watching TV, and then all of a sudden they heard their dad's deep, serious voice say Jess in their ear.
Right. Yes.
Well, although Jess's father had passed away, so maybe not a mimic, but regardless. So this is a follow-up to that, but it says, before I begin to follow up on the mimic, so there you go, which again, this is in order, so this was not curated to be this way. This just happened to be the next one that came in line. I wanted to assure you that my last message was in fact silly and goofy and exciting. JT, you were right. Ha 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 ha. And to apologize for the mimic name drop with no context. LOL. So
what was it right about?
So we had been poking fun because it started with "hey" in all caps with multiple exclamation points. So I was like, "Hey!"
Oh yeah, okay, yeah.
So I was just poking fun at you, Jess. No worries, we gotcha. But okay, let's start. I'm not fully sure if it actually is a mimic, and here is why I think it could be and why I'm not sure. My entire life has been surrounded by death. In this house, and I believe the mimic occupies was my dad's family home. I have had 3 generations of relatives pass away in this home. My great-grandma, my grandma, my dad, and my grandpa. This does not include the relatives that may be attached to my mom and I from the home we lived in prior, which was her family home, being her parents, her brother, etc. I will start off by saying that when the mimic-esque behavior started, I was fully convinced that it was my deceased loved ones just trying to communicate. Most of the time, I would just hear my name in their voice, nothing else, just literally Jess. And that was it. I have heard my gram mostly. She would always mess with me when I was younger. She loved scaring me and would hide in entryways or sneak up behind me and scare the living daylights out of me, then laugh her ass off.
Oh, no.
She was a prankster, and who funny enough turned me into a prankster. One time I had gone into the bathroom and knew for a fact I did not lock the door. When I went to leave, the door was locked. There are no keys to this door. It can only be locked and unlocked from the inside. So I assumed that it was just Grammy messing with me. Things go missing all the time to be found somewhere else, completely opposite, etc. Fast forward, the name calling keeps happening, but now it is the different voices of my loved ones and me still just blaming them until one morning. ...
Ooh.
I have to get up and be at work at 3:30 a.m. sometimes, which that's a feat.
That might be the scariest thing said today.
Exactly. I was the only one awake, and at this point, it was just my mom, brother, and grandpa living here. Mind you, this house was built in the 40s or 50s, so you can hear everything from anywhere. It was approximately 3:10 a.m., and I was in the bathroom washing my face. To put the room into perspective, the bathroom is located about 20-ish feet from the steps and the door to the basement. My mom's room is upstairs, my brother's room is in the basement, and my grandpa slept in the renovated room just off of the kitchen that used to be an open porch. The window in the bathroom leads directly to my grandpa's room. Anywho, I heard my mom's voice call my name, again, just Jess. And at this point, I have convinced myself that it was a mimic. My mom was asleep in her room. I checked and even asked her if she called for me earlier that morning, and she said no. I checked my brother's room. He was dead asleep and even peeked out the bathroom window to my grandpa's room, and he was also asleep. But the crazy part is it doesn't just happen at home. That's concerning. As I said, I work early some days, and when I go into work, I am one of 2 or 3 people there that early and will hear my coworkers calling my name with them nowhere in sight. Do mimics follow people? So anywho, I still am not fully convinced it is a mimic, but hearing my mother call my name when she was completely passed out was kind of the selling point on, maybe this is a mimic theory. Maybe there's a spooky secret that could help me figure out which one, because all they ever say is my name. Maybe it was what Chris said, and whoever/whatever it is just wants my attention. Or maybe it's my terrible luck, and I have both. LOL. Also, to follow up, if anything did happen after I heard my dad's voice. I do not believe so. Nothing major in my life happened or changed, so it's very well possible that it could have just been the mimic. But at the same time, exactly a month after I heard my voice, I tore my ACL and now require reconstruction surgery.
Wow.
Coincidence? Maybe. Ironic? Definitely. I'm still very new to understanding the paranormal world and trying to piece together the experiences I have had over the 24 years of life on this earth so far. Nothing has ever been absolutely mind-boggling. Mundane is a good word for my experiences, but there has been a lot. My old house was built in the 60s on an old cornfield. Gives me Children of the Corn vibes. No matter where I went in that house, I always felt like I was being watched. I had no peace there. I still feel like that a lot, but nowhere near as bad as it was in that house. I was constantly anxious, constantly speaking to something that wasn't there. I always assumed it was my mom's parents because they had built that house and passed away shortly after I was born, that they were just trying to watch me grow up in the only way they could. But now thinking about it, I do not believe I would have felt discomfort if it was them. Who knows, though? When we first moved into this house, the mimic house, I saw a black shadow in the corner of the room with red eyes. Thus why to this day I still sleep with the TV on. You will not catch me slipping on that one. No, no, no. I have not seen it since, though, and this is me praying that I don't ever again. I have always had what I believe to be sensitivity to the paranormal, the being watched, feeling things or people that aren't there, bad juju vibes, etc. When I was born, my horoscope said babies born in the time frame which I was would run through life with or psychic abilities. Now, I don't believe in horoscopes, but something seems pretty fishy here if you ask me. I'm so sorry my paranormal stories are a mess. I could keep going on and on, again, but again, they are relatively small. However, if you want to hear about the ghost at our friendly neighborhood McDonald's where I work, I'll send another ghost mail. This one comes with receipts if I still have them. Yes, please. I would love to actually hear about McDonald's ghost.
Haunted McDonald's. And what better place to be haunted than a McDonald's? I imagine that spirits are constantly, stuck in routines from their lives. So yeah, that would be interesting.
Exactly. Thank you for doing what you do and making even the small stories feel welcome and being a guide to me figuring out what the hell I've experienced in my life. I've learned so much from you guys and can't wait to learn more. Well, yeah, that's a fascinating update, Jess. It's to me that sounds like a mimic.
In
a way,
definitely a personal attachment.
Yes.
Because a mimic will follow you anywhere if it's attached to you. And from the sounds of it, you may have encountered it in its original form, the shadow figure with red eyes, before it was able to assume any other figures. And one of those interesting things about mimics is they do tend to get caught in a pattern of speech, like just calling names, just calling. Like when mimics start getting even more clever or more conversational, that's you're now in a wider realm of mimicry. Because when they start making suggestions, asking you to do opening the door or things like that, that puts them in a far more communicative and understanding. Because in a lot of times it's mostly like a duck call, like a hunter out there with something that makes the sound. And so if they polish off that sound, which just is like one or two words, oftentimes your name being called is I want to say in mimic lore
There's a frog.
Oh, okay.
There is a noisy frog right outside the door, just objecting to my analysis of mimics. But as I was saying, a lot of times it's a very simple trap. It's a come here, come here. Hey. So oftentimes that's how people know that it's a mimic, is that it is patently abnormal. When it starts talking, like talking, I think you're now creeping into demonic territories. You're creeping into a more malicious spirit with more intelligence to it, because a basic mimic is just siphoning off of your own memories and playing off of the things that you would react to and interact with. So yeah.
And the question being, can mimics follow you? I mean, if it's an attachment, then, by all means,
absolutely,
it can follow you.
And it can start listening to anything around you and saying, oh, you responded to that person, so I'm gonna use that one's voice this time, because you interacted with them. Maybe I'll use that voice. Because that's a big part of, I think, mimicry is a big part of it is that attention is such a vital energy in the spiritual realm. When humans give attention to spirits, the spirits are stronger, they are more active, they have more presence. So just like a spirit showing up and being like boogity boogity, and you're like, you're spoon feeding it this attention that gives it more ability to interfere with your life.
Right.
So with every time that it gets your attention, it gets stronger. And the more attention you pay to it, the more abilities it may, in the long run, have. So there is, I feel like we could talk a long time about the theory behind it, because these are all theories. There's no book that says this is how it is, and spray it with Windex twice and it'll be gone.
Right.
We don't have prescriptions for it, and we don't have a full understanding of it. But this seems to be the anecdotal theory. We pull it together because the more stories like this you hear, you're like, oh, what does it want ultimately? Because it focuses on a single person. It mimics people close to it, people that it trusts, people that it responds to or interacts with. Oftentimes it comes about around tragedy. You're vulnerable, you're open, you're looking for answers, and it provides answers. So there's a lot going on. Yeah.
Yeah, and you're in good company apparently on the mimic
this,
front.
This is crazy.
Yeah, so
it's wild. I remember we had an episode where we had four Hat Man.
Yeah.
Still
right.
ghost stories
and one didn't even seem like a Hat Man one, and then at the very last moment it was like, oh, that's a Hat Man story,
and he was wearing a hat.
Yeah,
Like,
right.
what?
I also would like to say that Trisha called your McDonald McHaunted, and I think that's
I'm McLovin' it.
I'm McLovin' that as well. But
McHaunting.
Now, JT, do we have time for another? Or?
We have room for one more.
All right.
Room for one more.
All right. Thank you for the update, Jess. And
keep them coming.
Yeah,
and
keep them coming.
We obviously need to hear about this haunted McDonald's.
Yes, I would really enjoy that, actually. But, all right. So this last one comes from Caris. So they said, hey, y'all, my name is Caris. I was born and raised in Texas. Yeehaw, with a cowboy emoji.
Heard that.
I love it. I have a lot of stories about strange things that have happened to me, but I'll try to keep things brief and send multiple ghost mails.
Awesome.
I also love that you named each of your stories. So story 1 is called Amber Alert.
Oh, wow.
Ooh.
So this was in 2021 when I was still with my ex. It was early in the morning, around 3 to 4 a.m. We were both in bed sleeping, and I woke up, which is common for me because I am a light sleeper and have sleep paralysis and lucid dreams a lot.
There you go.
So
wow.
we're still on
sleep
on
paralysis.
theme.
Yeah.
So I'm laying there in a haze of grogginess and annoyance at how peacefully he slept when I get a strong sense of him being annoyed. And I wondered why or how he could be annoyed when he was asleep and snoring. Then a few seconds later, I heard another man's voice in my head say, "Ha, they're not going to like this." And y'all, in an instant, our phones started blaring the loud alert broadcast tone.
Ooh.
There was an Amber Alert. It sent an icy jolt through my entire body. The alert was so loud. We could even hear the sound of our neighbor's phones through the shared wall. And of course, as the alarm sounded, my ex started to stir and mumbled half asleep in annoyance. I quickly grabbed his phone and mine so I could disable the alert because he had work that morning and I didn't want him to be fully awake and lose sleep like I had. I never told him because he isn't open to those things. I feel like I experienced a time blip and overheard whoever is responsible for scheduling the Amber Alert, which would be crazy. Maybe he was talking to someone else about how hundreds of thousands of people were going to how they weren't going to like being jolted out of their sleep so early. I think I have been a receiver for rifts in the pool of collective consciousness. Perhaps I was tuned into a radio frequency that many others are not at those given moments. So the next story is called Watching the Walls. This isn't about ghosts, but I used to go into these strange trances when I was a kid. From the ages of about 3 to 12, I'd go into what felt like a paralysis upon waking and sitting up. It was like sleep paralysis, but my eyes were open. And I was typically sitting up and upright as I was about to get out of bed. I would not be able to move. I would see a large projection of what appeared to be multiple small TV screens, all with different scenes being enacted. I had a traumatic childhood, so I think that this contributed to these strange happenings. I would hear conversations that happened in the house before I was alive. This happened a lot in my paternal grandparents' house. I'd see shadows go through the walls and hear arguments that had happened decades before I was born. I think the shadows were just nameless energies feeding on the hurt and fears soaked into that house. I don't know what was happening to me, and I never told anyone but a close friend I have now and my therapist. I just called it watching the walls. Sometimes I'd even see creatures outside the windows when I was in these trances. Perhaps I'll tell y'all about the skeleton man and another ghost mail. He was very polite, LOL.
Well, good.
Yeah, well, that's nice.
We like polite spirits.
Thank you for providing a safe space to discuss these things, Caris.
Wow.
Okay, so first, let's discuss the Amber Alert. I think you experienced a time slip, in a way, almost.
A time slip, but also a really wide band psychic phenomena.
Yeah.
If you were hearing somebody, hundreds of miles away, for all we know, making the declaration that they're not going to like this right before, because that's probably the sentiment. Like, it's like, look at the hour, and we're sending out an Amber Alert. If
you're going to wake up thousands of people.
Exactly. That's fascinating, and it does raise the question: what conduit is there that you're tapping into that has that much? Because I think you're following the time slip of your ex's annoyance from waking up moments before it happened, and then backtracking to what caused the annoyance and connecting with the person who caused the annoyance. And I'm like, that's some powerful, that's almost remote viewing, actually.
Yeah, yes.
That has a remote viewing sensation to it.
Yeah, and it definitely seems like you are very sensitive to the energies that especially are around you, or moments in time, because just like the fact that you talked about, you would wake up and go into these trances, which is very similar in remote viewing.
That's
where
very
you go
true.
into
and seeing all these multiple screens where action is happening, seeing things in the past, all of those things can be attributable to remote view. You might want to look into remote viewing and see if you're not innately gifted in that.
Yeah, it's a lot of it. When you look it up, you'll stumble across Project Stargate and all that, because that was really the heyday of the remote viewing.
Well, it's legitimized a lot because the FBI, still believe, in this as a viable tool. The CIA still believes in it as a viable tool. There are very extensive workshops to help develop these skills. But if you're doing it haphazardly, accidentally, it might be just a question of refining,
honing it in,
what raw skills you may have. And again, this is what it sounds like to us. We're not saying that that's what's happening. It just has the ring of it.
Yeah, if you look it up and it resonates with you, it might be worth looking into. And if it's not something that you think that is what's going on, it's a very interesting topic nonetheless. So
absolutely. It's a very, very fascinating thing.
Have we ever covered it on the podcast?
We should. We have. We talked a little bit about it. We touched upon
with
it.
the Alaska Triangle.
Right, with the Alaska Triangle.
Because that had remote viewing
as a component.
Yeah.
Okay, heard.
But we can absolutely do a remote viewing, because I want to say that there's a group that's actively doing experiments with it.
I believe it.
Because there's frequencies that really help, like listening to certain frequencies, and exercises that you can do to kind of hone it. Because apparently, it doesn't take psychic gift as much as it does a pattern understanding. Some people are very good at it. Some people, they are resistant.
Mm-hmm.
So moving forward, Pam said something real creepy.
Yeah, I was just about to bring that up. Pam said, sometimes as I fall asleep, I hear mommy, but it doesn't exactly sound like any of my kids.
Jesus, guys.
That's very scary.
That's like a one-sentence horror film.
It is.
Also,
seriously, that's a one-sentence horror film right there.
It also kind of works in the exhaustion of parenthood.
Yeah.
playing out the continuous sensations of being needed and being wanted and having it pulls on you. You can easily still be hearing just the echoes of earlier calls to you. But the fact that you're like, it doesn't quite sound like my kids, definitely trips right into that mimic sensation.
Absolutely. Yeah,
And one time I heard baby.
Oh, God. Oh, no.
That is very spooky.
That's super
Big
creepy,
yikes.
Pam. I'm not going to lie. Yes, no, but below that said, that is so spooky, Pam.
That is so spooky.
And Trisha said, you guys are gifting your viewers with a safe place for sharing their stories, which is a part of their healing journey.
Aw.
And Ashley said, Trisha, I've been here for a while and I couldn't agree more. So that's
Dang.
very sweet. We really appreciate hearing that, y'all.
Yeah.
Well, and growing up as we did, it's hard to have safe spaces to discuss this. It's hard to find places because even among people who are very dedicated to this field, in their dedication comes a sense of obligation to debunk and a sense of obligation to be
Yes.
grounded or be skeptical and to treat things from the point of view of real world versus fantasy world, which is a dangerous way to approach paranormal investigating. It's a dangerous way of associating with the supernatural because it automatically makes every supernatural thing the other. And by making it the other, it becomes adversarial. And it's dangerous to try to coax people into an idea that there is such a thing as the real world and that the supernatural world is not a part of it. Because, again, you're breeding a line, a border between these things, and comprehending it and understanding it will never come if you're always trying to anchor these unexplainable things to explainable phenomenon.
Yeah, I feel like I was pretty lucky growing up. I had family, I should say my parents specifically and my sister, that they never tried to discredit me. And I think that's because they had enough experiences with me where they're like, yeah, this has to be real. But, I do attribute that to being a part of the reason why my abilities are still so intact as an adult.
But you were never curbing them.
Yes.
Right.
They never tried to push me out of them. But that didn't mean that for a long time, until we literally created this podcast, I didn't talk about my abilities publicly outside of
You would choose your friends very carefully.
Right.
You would know who you could talk to and who you couldn't.
Exactly.
You would gauge and you become very adept at saying, well, these are people who would never understand.
Exactly.
Or these are people who will immediately ostracize me for my belief. And that is one of those things that if you spend enough time holding on to these spooky encounters, and realizing that the vast majority of people are going to dismiss it, you start to question yourself. You start to say to yourself, because I can't tell you how many of these ghost mails start with, you're going to think I'm crazy, or if I told anybody, they would say I was crazy.
Yes.
Right.
The fact that is the sentiment of these events that happen to people's lives, and usually there are events that define the person. There are events where they're like, from that moment on, my reality had to include this.
Right.
Yeah.
But when I tried to tell people that this is my reality and it includes this, people are like, well, you're crazy. And it's like, that's no way to accept a person's experiences.
Not
Exactly.
at all.
Exactly.
Did y'all read what Ashley said?
Yeah. Ashley said, I was called insane on my wedding day, and she got married in a cemetery, mind you, before I read the rest of this, for believing in ghosts. And I just laughed and told them they were insane for not believing, and that is growth. 2 years ago, that would have made me cry.
Yeah, who I got to beat up, Ashley?
Right? It's, yeah, I'm like, listen, if somebody gets married in a cemetery, obviously they believe in ghosts. So it's like,
Yeah, it's true.
but that is growth, You just kind of have to... You kind of just have to grin and bear it sometimes with these people. And also sometimes it takes people to actually have an experience for them to ever fully believe in that.
All right, we are running out of time, but before we go, I do want to read an email that was actually sent directly to me, not our ghost mail. Sometimes that does happen. But this is from Ashley Parton. And it's a location suggestion.
Oh,
excellent.
Okay.
And I've never heard of it, and I'm interested to see if y'all have heard of it. Hello, my spooky favorites. I hope I'm writing the correct email address. You didn't, but that's okay. I still got it. I discovered this podcast back in March of this year. While I was looking for anything I could on the movie A Savannah Haunting, I came across you guys and have been hooked ever since. I absolutely love everything about the show. Madison's research and Chris's knowledge go hand in hand. JT's jokes and waiting to see what name he's going to call himself next is the best.
See, I told you they look forward to it.
I know.
You let him down.
Yeah.
You let him down.
I let you down, Ashley. I don't have any ghost stories or any encounters, unfortunately, but I do have a location suggestion. Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary, in Petros, Tennessee.
That sounds so familiar.
Is notoriously haunted. I recently listened to the episode 2 Girls, One Ghosts done on the location, and I'm intrigued to go there myself. I hope you all will consider this location or at least do a segment on it. Keep the episodes coming and stay spooky, y'all. I think we should do an episode on it and then...
Absolutely. And put it on our list of candidates of locations.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Absolutely. And it would be nice to go to places that aren't widely known, you know, because a lot of times when a list comes out of you should go here, these are places that have been exhausted and have been, you know, really gone over with a fine-tooth comb. So it would be nice to go to places where our experiences get to be a little more raw and a little more, you know, our own.
I completely agree with that. Yeah. I feel like I've heard of this place, and maybe when I do a little bit of research on it, it'll jog it back to my memory. But yeah, it's I love a good haunted penitentiary. So
oh sure,
that's good.
Oh,
yeah, we can definitely do that.
Awesome.
All right, that sounds good. Well, thank y'all so much.
Yeah, thank you so much, y'all, for listening to today's episode. We hope you enjoyed. If you have a ghost story that you would like to send to us, you can send it to ghostmail@hauntedcitypodcast.com. And we will eventually, as we make our rotation through it, we will, you know, get on through all of these ghost mails. And then also, you might just find that you have plenty of people who have similar stories in common with yours in the same episode. So that's pretty exciting. But yeah, so thank you guys so much for listening. My name is Madison Timmons.
I'm Chris Susi.
And I'm quite beefy.
Oh, there you go. He added his name just for...
Quite beefy.
For Ashley, yeah.
Just for Ashley. But yeah, so thank you all so much again, and stay spooky, y'all.